The slap echoed through the living room like a gunshot. Her head snapped to the side. Blood pooled at the corner of her lip. His friends erupted into laughter, the kind that comes from cruelty, not joy. Mark wiped his hand on his jeans, grinning at Jason and Tyler like he'd just won a bet they'd all been in on. "Look at her," he said, smirking. "Even her tears are pathetic." Emily stood there, frozen, her cheek burned red. Her vision blurred for a second, but she didn't raise her hand to touch her face. She didn't stumble backward. "Hello, friends. Welcome to Black Bite Stories. Before we begin today's story, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We love hearing from our global family." She didn't cry out. She just stood there, silent, absorbing the blow the way she'd absorbed every insult, every dismissal, every moment of cruelty over the past 5 years. They didn't know who she was. They didn't know what she'd buried inside herself. They didn't know the discipline she'd hidden beneath silence. They didn't know the strength she carried behind her calm eyes. They didn't know the fire she'd been holding back out of love, a love that had just died with that slap. Emily had always been the quiet one, the one who made coffee before Mark woke up, exactly how he liked it, the one who cleaned up after his friends without complaint, picking up their empty bottles and wiping down surfaces they'd stained, the one who smiled through his mother's insults, through Linda's constant reminders that Mark had married beneath him. She'd learned to make herself small, invisible, harmless. She folded herself into corners. She swallowed her words. She trained herself to disappear, but small didn't mean weak. Invisible didn't mean powerless. And harmless was a choice she was about to unmake. Before Mark, before the marriage, before the silence, Emily had been someone else entirely. She'd trained for years under a master who saw something in her that no one else did. Focus, precision, a spark that could burn down fear. She'd earned her highest sash at 23, the same year she met Mark. He'd been charming then, attentive, full of promises. He said he loved her gentleness. He said he admired her calm. What he really meant was that he loved how easy she was to control, how quiet she stayed, how little she asked for. She'd walked away from her training after they married, not because he asked her to, because she thought love meant sacrifice. She thought partnership meant compromise. She thought making him happy would make her whole. She was wrong. Mark threw another party that night. It started around 8. His colleagues filled the house, loud and drunk, talking too much about money and status and deals they hadn't closed. Jason and Tyler were there, of course. They always were. They treated Mark's home like their personal club. Emily moved through the crowd like a ghost, refilling drinks, clearing plates, staying out of the way, just like Mark had ordered her to. Rachel was there too. She stood near the dining room, laughing at something Mark's boss said. Around her neck hung a delicate gold necklace. Emily recognized it immediately. She'd seen the receipt weeks ago, hidden inside a magazine Mark thought she'd never open. The necklace cost more than their mortgage payment. He'd never spent that much on her. Not once. Rachel's father was there too, a man with sharp eyes and a sharper reputation. Mark needed him, needed his business connections, needed his approval, needed the promotion Rachel's family could help him secure. That's why Rachel was really there. That's why Mark touched her arm too often. Why he laughed too loud at her jokes. Why he ignored Emily completely, like she was part of the furniture. Emily watched from the kitchen doorway. She watched Mark's hand linger on Rachel's shoulder. She watched Rachel lean into him, confident, comfortable. She watched Mark's colleagues smile and nod, already treating Rachel like she belonged there, like Emily didn't exist. Jason cornered her in the kitchen. He leaned against the counter, blocking her path, a drink in his hand and a smirk on his face. You know you're embarrassing him, right? Just standing there looking sad. Mark's trying to impress people, and you're killing the vibe. Emily didn't respond. She tried to step around him, but Tyler appeared on her other side, grinning. Mark's too good for you, Tyler said. Everyone knows it. You should be grateful he keeps you around. Most guys would have traded up by now. Emily felt her breath slow, deepen, the way it used to before a match. Her body remembered what her mind had tried to forget. Discipline, control, power. Mark called her from the dining room. His voice was sharp, impatient, cutting through the noise. Emily, get in here. Now. She walked in slowly, her steps measured, precise. The room went quiet. Mark's colleagues turned to look at her. Rachel's father raised an eyebrow. Rachel sipped her wine, watching with mild curiosity. Mark pointed at her like she was a servant, not his wife. Get more wine from the cellar, and stay out of sight after that. You're making people uncomfortable. The room felt heavier. A few people looked away, embarrassed. But no one said anything. No one defended her. Emily stood there, meeting Mark's eyes. Her voice came out soft, steady, certain. No. The word hung in the air like a blade. Mark blinked. His mouth fell open. Jason laughed nervously from the doorway. Tyler whispered something to the man next to him. Rachel's father leaned forward in his chair, suddenly interested. Mark's face went from confusion to anger in seconds. What did you just say? Emily didn't repeat herself. She just stood there, balanced on both feet, weight centered, hands relaxed at her sides, waiting. Mark stepped toward her, his jaw tight, his eyes flashing. You don't talk to me like that. Not in front of these people. He grabbed her arm, trying to pull her toward the hallway, trying to drag her out of sight where he could yell at her without an audience. She pivoted, a small shift of weight, barely visible to anyone watching. His hand slipped off her arm. He stumbled forward, off balance, catching himself on the edge of the dining table. A few people gasped. Someone's fork clattered against a plate. Mark spun around, his face twisted with rage and confusion. What the hell was that? Emily didn't answer, didn't move, just waited. He lunged at her again, faster this time, reaching for her shoulder with both hands. She stepped aside. Not a big movement, not dramatic, just enough. He missed completely and stumbled into Jason, who'd been standing too close. Jason grunted, catching Mark by the shoulders. The room erupted in murmurs. Rachel's father stood up slowly, his eyes locked on Emily. Mark shoved Jason away and came at her a third time, wild now, reckless, humiliated in front of everyone he wanted to impress. Emily didn't retreat. She guided his momentum with one hand, barely touching his wrist. He flew past her like she'd thrown him, though she hadn't used any force. He crashed into the dining table. Glasses shattered. Wine spilled across the white tablecloth in a dark red stain. Plates slid off the edge and hit the floor. The sound was deafening in the sudden silence. No one moved, no one spoke. Everyone stared at Emily like they were seeing her for the first time. Tyler rushed forward, trying to grab her from behind, trying to restrain her like she was the problem. She sensed him coming before he touched her. She dropped her weight, twisted at the waist, and stepped to the side. Tyler's arms closed on empty air. His own momentum carried him forward, too fast to stop. He tripped over a chair leg and went down hard, his shoulder hitting the floor with a dull thud. The room exploded into shocked gasps and whispers. Jason backed away, hands raised, eyes wide. Mark pulled himself up from the wreckage of the table, panting, sweating, his shirt stained with wine. His eyes were wide with disbelief and something else. Fear. "How are you doing this?" His voice shook. Emily's voice was calm, quiet, unshaken. "You never asked who I was before I met you." Rachel's father stepped forward, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. "What does that mean?" Emily reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She tapped the screen once. The room filled with Mark's voice, slurred and cruel, recorded weeks ago after another drunken night with his friends. "I married down. She was easy to control. Quiet girls don't fight back." A few people shifted uncomfortably. Rachel's smile vanished. Another tap. Linda's voice, cold and calculating. "Break her spirit, Mark. Make her sign over that land. It's just sitting there anyway. She doesn't need it." Another tap. Rachel's voice this time, sweet and venomous, recorded from a voicemail Mark had saved and forgotten to delete. "I can't wait until she's gone. Then everything will be simple. We can finally be together without her sulking in the background." Rachel's face went pale. Her father's jaw tightened. Mark lunged for the phone, desperate, his hands shaking. "Turn that off. Turn it off right now." Emily stepped back smoothly, effortlessly. He reached again, grabbing for her wrist. She shifted her weight. He stumbled past her and hit the wall, his shoulder slamming into the plaster. A framed photo fell and shattered on the floor. Jason tried next, moving fast, grabbing for her wrist with both hands. Emily redirected his arm with a gentle push, using his own force against him. He spun and fell into the couch, knocking over a lamp. Tyler scrambled to his feet, angry now, humiliated. He charged at her like a linebacker. Emily sidestepped at the last second. He crashed into Mark. Both men went down in a tangled heap, groaning, cursing. The guests stared in stunned silence. Some had their phones out, recording. Others stood frozen, mouths open. Emily stood in the center of the room, untouched, unshaken, breathing steady and controlled. In complete control. Rachel's father cleared his throat. The sound cut through the chaos like a knife. He looked at Mark with cold disgust, the kind reserved for men who lie about who they are. "You told me you admired integrity," he said quietly. "You told me your marriage was solid. You told me you were a man of character." Mark pushed himself up, his voice shaking, desperate. "Sir, please. This is all taken out of context. She's twisting things. She's been spying on me." Rachel's father shook his head slowly. "I don't do business with liars, and I don't trust men who mistreat their wives." He turned to Rachel. "We're leaving. Now?" Rachel stood frozen, her hand on the necklace Mark had given her, the necklace that now felt like a brand. Her father gestured toward the door again, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Rachel, let's go." She hesitated, glancing at Mark one last time. He reached for her, his voice breaking. "Rachel, wait. We can fix this. I can explain everything." She stepped back, her voice quiet but firm, cutting. "You told me she was nothing. You told me she was weak." She looked at Emily with something like respect, something like shame. You're the weak one, Mark, not her." Rachel and her father walked out without another word. The door closed behind them with a soft, final click. One by one, the other guests followed. Some muttered awkward apologies to Emily as they passed. Jason grabbed his coat without looking at Mark. Tyler didn't even say goodbye. Within minutes, the house was empty. The silence that followed was deafening. Soon it was just Emily and Mark standing in the wreckage of his party, his career, his reputation, his lies. He stood there, hands shaking, breathing hard. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. "Emily, please. You can't do this to me." She walked to the dining table and placed a folder in front of him. Inside were divorce papers, modified terms, compensation for years of emotional abuse, full rights to her parents' property, a penalty clause for documented adultery. Mark stared at the papers, then at her, his face pale. "If I don't sign?" Emily held up her phone. The screen glowed with the recordings folder, full of files he didn't even know existed. "Then everyone hears the rest. Your colleagues, your boss, your mother, everyone." Mark's hands trembled as he picked up the pen. He signed his name in jagged, defeated strokes, each letter a surrender. Emily took the papers, folded them carefully, and placed them in her bag. She didn't gloat, didn't smile, didn't say a word. She just walked toward the stairs. She packed a small suitcase upstairs. Clothes, important documents, her parents' photo, the wooden box from the garage, the one she hadn't opened in years. Inside were her old martial arts sashes, folded with precision and care. The highest level, dark and worn from years of use, rested on top. She ran her fingers over the fabric, feeling the weight of who she used to be, who she'd always been underneath the silence. Her Sefiu's voice echoed in her memory, clear and strong. "Strength isn't loud. It doesn't need to shout. It waits, it breathes, and when it moves, it's undeniable." She closed the box, placed it in her suitcase, and zipped it shut. She walked back downstairs, her steps calm and measured. Mark stood at the bottom, his eyes hollow, his face drawn. "Where will you go?" His voice was small now, broken. Emily looked at him for a long moment. She didn't owe him an answer. She didn't owe him anything. She walked past him without a word and opened the front door. The night air was cool and clean, washing over her like a baptism. She stepped outside, her head high, her shoulders back. Behind her, Mark whispered her name one last time, a desperate plea that hung in the air unanswered. She didn't turn around. She kept walking, each step carrying her further from the woman she'd pretended to be. The door closed softly behind her. The sound felt final, permanent, free. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her Sefiu, the master who'd never stopped believing in her. "Tomorrow, first class. Are you ready?" Emily smiled for the first time in months, a real smile that reached her eyes. She typed one word and hit send. Yes. She walked down the driveway, her suitcase light in her hand, lighter than it had any right to be. The street was quiet. The sky stretched wide and open above her, full of stars she hadn't noticed in years. Somewhere in the distance, a new life was waiting, a life where she didn't have to shrink, a life where her strength was celebrated, not hidden, a life where she was seen for who she truly was. Mark had spent years thinking silence meant weakness. He'd mistaken patience for submission. He'd confused kindness with fear. He never understood that the quietest person in the room could be the most dangerous. He never realized that the woman he thought he'd broken had never been broken at all. She'd just been waiting for the moment she'd stop choosing his peace over her power. That moment had come, and when it did, she didn't just walk away. She walked forward, into herself, into her truth, into the life she'd always deserved but had been too afraid to claim. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who've learned to hold their power back. They don't fight because they can't. They don't fight because they don't need to. They've already won the only battle that matters, the one inside themselves. But when the time comes, when the line is crossed, when love turns to lies and respect turns to cruelty, when dignity is stripped away one insult at a time, they remind the world what strength really looks like. Not loud, not violent, not desperate. Just clear, just certain, just undeniable. Emily had spent years being small, folding herself into corners, swallowing her words, training herself to disappear. Tonight she reclaimed her size, she reclaimed her voice, she reclaimed every piece of herself she'd given away to a man who never deserved it. And the world would never see her the same way again. Neither would she. The woman who walked away from that house wasn't the same woman who'd walked into it 5 years ago. She was stronger now, not because of what Mark had done to her, but because of what she'd done for herself. She'd remembered who she was, and that changed everything.